All right. I think we should be live. I believe. Good audio. Thank you very much, Wabbit. That was what I was going to ask. You beat me to it, but I appreciate it. Thank you. going on? Figured that was a nicer way to do the intro than me just sitting on here going, is it okay? Is it okay? Can you hear me? Is it okay? But can you hear me? Can you hear the vocal? Cool. Well, welcome everybody. It's another lovely Saturday afternoon here in Colorado. It's probably somewhere in the middle of the night where you might be. But yeah, just wanted to hang out for a little while and talk about some of the new-ish additions. Not necessarily like brand new, but the additions that are kind of having the biggest nice impact on what I'm doing here with the live set. And as I look at the gear here, I can kind of break that down into three big categories of things that are having a big, relatively new impact on the live set. And I would put those into the categories as you saw in the thumbnail for this video: Shakmat, Oxy, and Elektron. I mean, those are kind of the newest, most useful, most interesting things that I have going in here. Shakmat, there's a couple modules here that we're going to talk about. The Oxy Meta, brand new, just out. I've had it for a little while, I'm able to mess around with it for a little bit, but it's now available for everybody. And then of course the Digitakt 2, that's kind of old news now. It's not new, but kind of the way I'm using it and the way it's kind of allowed me to move some stuff around in my rig is relatively new. And then of course the Oxy 1 is the thing for my setup, and that's kind of sequencing everything that's here, including some of the stuff in the Digitakt and all that. So yeah, so welcome everybody. Glad to see there's a few people in the chat already. So if let's see, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop those into the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions about the things we're talking about or about anything else, about the gear, the setup, the live stuff, my online course. That the latest session of that is live now, the video portion, and then the first of the online live chats, live video calls is tomorrow. So you can still sign up. Today's the last day that you can sign up. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, join us with that. There's a link in the description of the video below, or you can go to circlelive.com/courses and get signed up there. And it's all about performing live and how to set up and use gear and select gear and sound design and sequencing and patterns and song structure and performing and how to tour and gig and get gigs and market yourself and all kinds of stuff. So it's a fun course. So if you're interested in doing that, jump on board with this one. It's a month, sorry, it's a month long, the live section is, but you have kind of unlimited, for as long as you want, access to the online video content and our cool little community of people who've taken the course, which is a fun group. Everybody's kind of getting to know each other, networking, sharing ideas and stuff. So it's a ton of fun. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. Otherwise, if you have any questions, let's check out the chat over here. Let's see, Wabbit's here. Good to see you, man. Course alumni from the first session. Let's see, volume of the music in relation to the volume of the mic. Okay, let me know if that's still not good. If the mic is too low or too high, let me know. Easy enough to adjust. Let's see what else. Oxy effects, yep. Meta definitely sounds awesome. Yeah, it's a crazy cool module. Why don't we get started talking about this, because it's I've seen a couple videos about it online, and I want to make sure that people who are thinking about it don't have just the impression from the videos that are online. The videos that are online are very much like super high energy. Like if you're going to be just like rocking out, you can use this to do those kind of effects. But it is important to note that they can be really subtle too. You have a lot of control over the intensity of the effects as you're using them. And I'm going to adjust this just a little bit here so I can take out Yeah, you don't need that. So now you can see the meta a little better next to the other frame. So yeah, so they can be pretty mellow. So like for example, in what I was just playing, I was using the filter, and you can turn that resonance all the way down, and you can get a really nice actual filter, and it's not just a resonant, high energy, kind of big build up, big drop kind of filter. It's something that that can be used. They can be used in a lot of different situations. I have it on a master send for my mixer, so it is really a master effect. So it's kind of, this with the mixer is kind of acting like a DJ mixer. That's kind of the way it's set up. It's on a master send, then it comes back in through here and goes out through the main. And everything in the setup is going through this mixer, including the Digitakt 2. The outs from that are going to a mix input on the mixer. So I'm still doing gain, volume adjustment, all that stuff from over here, and sending that into the into the performance mixer. And that way everything goes through the Oxy Meta, everything goes through the effects before it comes out the other side. So yeah, you have a lot of control over it. I'll do a little bit more demos in a minute here, but I want to kind of walk through a few things first, but then I'll go back and demo some of that so you can see a little bit how it sounds in different settings, being more aggressive or less aggressive. Yeah, so it is important to note that a couple of these things were given to me, and no sponsorship, no nothing. I just asked to try them, and they were kind enough to let me do that. So that includes the Oxy Meta and the Shakmat Battering Ram and the Shakmat Archer's Rig. I tried them all three at Superbooth and was blown away by them. So I basically begged the companies to let me borrow them and use them a bit, and they were kind enough to let me do that. So just wanted to make sure that that we kind of laid that out there. It's not sponsored. They didn't, pay me anything. They didn't tell me to do the videos or anything. In fact, none of them know I'm doing the videos, and that's happened a couple of times recently. I've talked about something, and they sent me a message afterwards like, "Hey, let us know if you're going to put us in a video, and we'll put it out there." But I actually never know what I'm going to put in the video until it's time to do the video, so it's hard for me to let them know ahead of time. But anyway, enough about that. So the next thing, so that's the Meta. We'll talk a little bit more about that and all the effects and how it works and what it sounds like, and some sound demos as well. Next thing is the Digitakt 2. We'll talk about that really quick. Using this in my setup in a couple of different ways. First things first, the tracks 1 through 8 are all drums and percussion. So this is basically my drum kit. I do have the kick and hat in my modular case, but I also have kicks and hats in here too, because I want to be able to mix it up a little bit. But the interesting thing is, so like my kick in my Digitakt 2, that sound is actually a sample of the Battering Ram. So I love this drum module. So I actually sampled it into here to be able to use. But yeah, so that's that. So this one, drums and percussion along the top. So you've got kick. This is always like clap snare-ish sounding stuff. Then a couple percussion things that can be different. Then a closed hat, open hat, and then a couple of toms. Just to use for different things. And those are kind of the basics of a drum kit. And I pretty much use those all the time. They're very flexible sounds, and there's a lot of control within here. So I don't tend to change those up a lot. I will change the dedicated percussion sounds. And so like clap snare and 2 percussions, so 2, 3, and 4. I do change those up usually per kit, but everything else I leave the same because it's got a lot of flexibility of being able to control it in there. And then in the 9 through 16 section, 9 to 12 are just kind of tonal melodic synth things going from low to high. And then 13 through 16 are loops. And some of those are loops that I recorded from this modular rig, and some are loops that I recorded from my other, like my studio modular case, the bigger one. And they're things that I can kind of time stretch and kind of play a loop in the background if I'm missing something. So something like that repeats. So that kind of stuff. Then I've got some things that I recorded from here. So like this is the Basto Pizza. So little things like that that I've just kind of saved in here because I was interested in them and I wanted to go to, I wanted to have the chance to get back to them at some point. So I'll just record a little quick, 4-bar loop and then use that sometimes during the performances. But yeah, so that's how I'm using the Digitakt 2, and we'll go over that a little bit more if you have any questions later on. And then we'll go to the Shakmat modules, which up until I would say about a month or so before Superbooth, Shakmat wasn't really on my radar. Like I had seen them and there was kind of like, I always kind of knew what they were, but it wasn't anything that kind of really grabbed me because a lot of the music that I saw or listened to and saw videos about online that they were being used for wasn't really kind of the style that I was doing. And it was a little bit more kind of ambient stuff or breakbeat type stuff or things like that. And it wasn't really exactly what I was into. And then just before Superbooth, I saw a couple videos online about the Battering Ram, and I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting kick drum. Never really wanted to have a module for kick because I've never heard one that I really liked. Like some of them are okay, they're fine, but I would much rather have a really good sample. And the samples that I always used in the Digitakt were always like kicks that I made in the analog rhythm by layering samples and analog synths and effects and overdrive and all that stuff. And then I would make a sample that I would resample and I'd load in the Digitakt so I could use that for performance. So I never really wanted to have a kick in my case. And I heard a couple videos with the Battering Ram and I was like, that sounds kind of interesting, I'll check it out. And when I went to Superbooth, I went to their booth and started playing around with it, and I was absolutely blown away. And to the point where I was basically like, what do I have to do to get my hands on one of those things? It's amazing. I would love to mess around with that and potentially work it into my live set. I ended up speaking with them about that. They let me take one of these with me. I put it into my case immediately and used it like 3 days later in a show that I had in Brussels, and used it right away. Used it in my show in Seattle after that, a week later, and I couldn't get enough of it. Then I got back, was loving it. I've already recorded a bunch of stuff into my DAW using this. When I had this in my studio case, I had it on its own separate out so that I could use it multi-tracked in and I could save just the kick sounds. So I could get a whole bunch of them from this. And then as you heard, I sampled it into the Digitakt 2. So any way that I can use this, I've been finding ways to use it because I absolutely love it. And we'll walk through again a little bit the sounds of that, what it sounds like, how versatile it can be, and a little bit of what some of the cool features that it has. Shockingly, in such a small module, I was really blown away by it. And then about 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, something like that, they sent me the Archer's rig. When this first came out, they had mentioned that when I was there and said, hey, you want to try this out? And I was like, sure, I'll try it. I'll see. I don't really put drums in my case. So I was like, yeah, whatever, it's not, but I'll try it. And I liked the fact that it has 2 inputs, so you can sequence closed hat, open hat separately. And I like the fact that it has a lot of control over what's going on in there. And it's synth-based, it's not sample-based. So I like being able to make the sounds and have a lot of control over them. And then I started using it, and I was kind of shocked at all the things that it can do. So it's not just a hi-hat module. Like I was thinking, I've seen like the Tip Top Audio 909 hat modules. So it's kind of like closed hat, open hat, sounds like a 909, sounds really great. And I thought this was gonna be like their version of that. And I got it, and it does have a 909 section. So like this part that it's on right now, this is kind of the 909 sounding for the open hat, and then closed hat. So I was like, okay, cool. Already, that's something that I'll use. That's like a great sounding kick and a 909 open hat and closed hat. I mean, that you're already 3/4 of the way to a fun party just with those. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. But then I started messing around with it and realizing all of the different things that it could do, and that it's not just a hi-hat module. In fact, I would say that's only a little piece of what it does. So I'm to the point now where, I may end up putting another Archer's rig in my case and just using them as different types of cool percussion, because already in here, there's a decay and a filter, which is huge for me. Then you can tune, and there's a volt per octave, so you can do pitched things and kind of melodies and stuff if you wanted to. And then there's some effects built in, which are also, interesting and cool, and make some really unusual sounds, which I think is great. For the music that I do, it sounds, amazing, really interesting. So I started playing around with it, and I'll just kind of show you. So like here we have kind of the traditional 909 hat, but then if we start to go through it, we have, this is an FM synthesis engine. This one is, I don't remember actually what the C is. I should look for my manual here. This one's a ring modulation. This one is kind of a bell tone. You run something like that through. Through an effect, and all of a sudden you get something that sounds really unique and different, pretty far away from a hi-hat. Then it also has, this is a dedicated sine wave, which again, and I just have the trigger input going into here. I'm not using any kind of volt per octave or anything, so I'm not adjusting tone. This is just setting in a strict trigger. So you're kind of hearing the pure thing, and then there's a tone knob that I'm using to change that, but that's pretty much it. So straight sine wave, also very interesting. You can make that into a bass line, you can make that into a lead, you can make that into kind of whatever you want. There's a place to save. Then you have some different versions of noise, which is pretty cool. And then you've got a 808 sound here. Kind of scrolling through the stuff here. Then we get back to our 909. So as you can see, there's a huge variety of stuff that this can do, way, way, way beyond just your normal kind of hi-hat module. So yeah, it does hi-hats, it does 909s, it does 808s, it's got a noise generator. So you can really kind of shape and make your own hats if you want to, but also being able to go in and do like bell tones and sine waves and all kinds of other stuff. It's, FM modulation and ring modulation. All that stuff is really cool because it, especially, with techno percussion, it doesn't need to be a certain sound. It doesn't have to sound like a, like a wood block or like a bongo. It can be these kind of metallic industrial sounds. In fact, I prefer that kind of stuff. And so that's why, I think the Archer's rig is really interesting as a hat module, but it's also really interesting as just a general percussion module, or even something more tonal. If you would connect up the volt per octave and adjust the tuning on things like a sine wave, well, all of a sudden you've got that, and then you send it through, it's got a filter, so you can filter that down. You can send it through effects. You can use it to modulate other modules. all kinds of cool stuff that you can do with it. So definitely super, super interesting, and way beyond what I thought it was going to be. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I got it. I did not think that it was going to be as interesting as it is. It also has the ability to save presets, so you can make your own stuff and then you can save those into it, and it's and you can recall those using their format, or you can recall them using the menu. So it's really handy. It's a very handy tool there, and yeah, it also has a couple of other like workflow things that are really cool. So you've got like a trigger on it, so you can trigger things, like, so when you're doing sound design, I love when modules do that, when they put just a little trigger button on there, because a lot of times when you're trying to dial something in, you don't necessarily have a sequence already going. So you want to just kind of like, okay, I want to find that. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to go back to my sequence. So, whenever they do handy workflow stuff like that, I really appreciate it. So that's just kind of a rough overview of the Archer's Rig. Happy to answer any questions that I can right now. I just got it, so there's a lot that I don't know about it. I have the manual around here somewhere. I think it's in my backpack. I may have to go grab that because it does have some more information about the things that I was just talking about, and it's still new enough that don't have any idea. I was, when I was in Portland for my gig last week, I was in the hotel kind of messing with it, and I had the manual sitting right there next to me like, okay, so what does it do? What's this other thing? And, trying to find my way through it, which is cool. But once you kind of know how it works, where everything is, the workflow is super intuitive because the four main knobs that are on it, just like the four knobs on the Battering Ram, are kind of the key things that you want to have. You've got decay, filter, your effect, and then your tuning. And so to be able to just immediately grab that for something that's hi-hat or percussion like that is really, really handy. So it makes it very playable. So like if you're playing along and you want to just like, do like a breakdown where you like make your decay much longer and then kind of drop into something that's much shorter, having that kind of immediate hands-on control while you're doing other stuff, like doing effects or bringing back in a kick drum or something like that, it's really handy to be able to do that there. Where when I was doing that on the Digitakt, I could do that as well with my hi-hats that I have here, but I would have to go into whichever menu I was going to go into for that. So if it was decay, I would go into that menu and adjust that. And if I wanted to then adjust the filter, I would go to that menu and adjust that. Well, here I can do like filter and decay together, and I can mess with them. And here they're on two separate menus. So to be able to do that, you don't have the same kind of like hands-on immediacy as you do with a module like this. So, so far, super digging it, and I've been really, really, really enjoying the Archer's Rig. So let's jump in and see if there's any questions here. Nice space, sounds great. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Greetings from Spain. Hola, buenos días, buenos tardes, noches. I'm not sure. What time is it there? It is, it's midnight there. So it's like early in the morning. Welcome, glad to have you. What Shakmat do you have your eye on next? What a great question that is, because it's like I said, they weren't on my radar. And all of a sudden now I'm like, oh man, like the two that I have sound amazing. Like I can't wait to try others in the thing. And I noticed, I was on their website looking for the manual for this and some more information on this. And I noticed that they have a, what's it called? Centaur's Gate, I think it's called. And it's a dual gate. So basically like a dual filter / low pass gate, except it's not only low pass because it does high pass, band pass and low pass, built-in VCA, all kinds of stuff. So basically what it is, in an 8 HP module size, it has, is it 8 or 10? I don't remember, but it has two filters basically, which can be run as two separate filters, or they're run in, they're normal to run in sequence. So you can basically use it just exactly the same way that you would use a, the filter on an MS-20, which is absolutely my favorite filter ever. I love how kind of angry and aggressive you can get when you have that high pass, low pass, and you get them really high resonant, and you get those the harmonics working together on them. So the idea of having a module like that, I'm very excited about. I would like to put some of my kind of more normal sounding modules through something like that to get a real kind of gritty, nasty sound. So yeah, the Centaur's Gate I think is probably the next one I'm interested in. And then also their oscillators seem really interesting too, like very clean, very interesting sounding. So maybe get a couple of those so I can FM some things together. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe they'll hook me up. Let's hope. Otherwise, I'm going to go broke getting Shakmat modules. But yeah, I think the Centaur's Gate's probably the next one that I have my eye on. Let's see, where are we here? The Battering Ram module definitely sounds great. It does. It's crazy good. Like, we can talk about that for a second again. The Battering Ram, if you just play along here. Oops, not record, play. So the thing that really struck me, anytime I had used a modular kick before, the thing that was always frustrating for me was it took me a very long time to kind of dial it into the sound that I wanted it to have. And there was these kind of like specific sweet spots that I had to find and be like, oh yeah, that sounds really amazing, like that one kick. But then as soon as you moved away from it, it was like, it's not doing it for me anymore. And I got to really work to find those sweet spots. The reason I was so excited about this after Super Booth was when I sat there and started playing with it, it was just like this endless sweet spot. Like anything you did with it, like a lot of kicks, they sound good as one particular kind of kick. And then if you try to go off that, it always sounds like it's trying to be something that it's not. And with these, like the ability to dial it in with really hands-on control like this and get something that you really like. So like if I wanted this to be a more mellow kick, if I was to kind of reduce down the drive, reduce down the click, and reduce down the depth, and then, kind of medium decay, now I know when I turn this up, I'm going to have kind of a medium sounding kind of soft kick, right? But what's crazy about it, and hopefully this translates over, the outbound and going through YouTube's compression and whatever. But what's crazy about it is even without any of the aggressiveness, it's still super punchy. So you can really feel it. And when you start to put it into context, like what I was doing before. Even though it's not a super aggressive kick, you can still feel it coming through in the mix. It's still very prominent without having to be crazy loud. That for me is the sign of a really great kick, when it doesn't have to be a super aggressive transient or a super high amount of drive in order to make you be able to hear it through a mix. And so to be able to have this in that kind of a context where it's kind of that kind of low soft kick, and being able to get that out there, it's pretty amazing that you can still hear that through. Now, it can be much more aggressive. So if I was to turn up the depth of the attack, and then my click, which is that transient at the beginning, I can get it to really kind of click and punch through. And then if you start to add some drive to that, right? You get that really super punchy, much more aggressive kick. Then this has a second drive circuit. So you can see there's like a green light on there. That green light is drive circuit 1. And if I wanted to go to drive circuit 2, you just hit that. And now it's the red drive circuit, which is the more aggressive one. So the top of the green one is basically the bottom of the red one. They overlap by like 20%. So now I can go to where I was before on this one, but I have still my full sweep of the amount of aggressiveness that I can add to that. So listen how far this can go. Right, and that's in the context as well, so I can pull that out. That's the kick, so now I can start to bring that down. And that takes me down to kind of the top of my last one. and then I can go down from there. And again, you've got a bunch of decay. So let's say you wanted this to be more like 808 style, so you kind of take off some of your kick and some of your drive and just really boost up the decay. Right? Or if you want to get it back into kind of more 909 style. Right? And you've got this decay, so you can really shorten it up, or you can lengthen it up as well. So you can bring this all the way down and get this really super, super tight if you want, or you can let it go and have this be like big boomy style kick. So there's a lot of flexibility with it. And as you can hear, like no matter where you turn the knobs on this thing, it's like, it's a crazy good sounding kick for any of those styles. So if you do like, you know, super hard, you know, hard techno and you need something like really distorted, then it does that. If you're doing like, you know, deep house and you want this kind of groovy, punchy, but subtle kick, well, it does that too. And kind of everything in between. I'm more of a fan of this kind of medium. The way I would put the sound of it, the way I use it is it sounds kind of like a processed 909. It doesn't quite sound like the plain 909 just by itself. It sounds like a 909 through an overdrive, or a 909 that's being pushed into your mix, and it gives it that same kind of grit and body. Which I love. Another couple things that this has built in, which is really cool. One of these illuminated lights down here is for a high pass filter. So it has a built-in high pass filter that cuts everything below 30 Hertz. And so again, you don't have to worry about that big boomy kick getting all sloppy in the low end of your mix. You can fix that right here without having to waste an additional filter by putting it through that just to cut those off there. And we all know that there's never enough space in your case, right? So having enough space to have that extra filter or to put it through some sort of an EQ is really, you never have that. So to have that here is great. Then it also has the other light that's down here, this bit that's going out right here is an envelope. So you can send out the envelope of whatever sequences that you're doing in the envelope that's controlled by the decay and the depth here. You can send that envelope out to other things, but with the button that's on here, if it's lit up, it's actually inverting the envelope. So if the envelope is kind of a spike up, like it is at the beginning of the transient of a kick drum, what you're actually sending out is a dip down instead of a spike up. It's an inverted envelope. So what that allows you to do is basically push out a version of sidechain to wherever you want it to go. So I have that going into an attenuator, and then I have that going out to other modules. So I can control how much of that inverted envelope I'm sending out, whether I'm sending it to, you know, a VCA and a module in order to get it to dip down, or if I want to send it to something for modulation. It's crazy handy to have that in the kick drum. And I'd seen, so there's kick modules like the Kicane, for example, where it has a sidechain capability, but you have to run your whole mix through the kick drum and then send it out in order for that to be sidechained. And with this inverted envelope out, it's really handy to be able to send it to whatever you want. So it doesn't have to be your whole mix. You don't have to pre-mix to go into that to then send that out. This can just be part of your regular mix, and then you can be sending out that inverted envelope to whatever you want to send it out to. So also super, super, super handy. It has a lock where you can lock the pitch, which, you know, who doesn't like that in modular, being able to lock your pitch so you can't knock it out of whack. Then it has a gate capability. So if you wanted to sequence this using gate instead of trigger, you can put it in gate mode, which again, this has volt per octave as well. So being able to do very much like you can with the Archer's rig, this can be, you know, a tom or a bass, or it can do, you know, melodic things, kind of low end melodic stuff with all that same control by putting it on the gate mode. And then you can change the length of your notes, of your tones that are going to it. And you can sequence the volt per octave. So pretty handy as a module goes. So let's see what we got here in the chat. Chris Lima, hey from, let's see, baguette, croissant, fromage et vin. I think we're talking France there. If we're talking to Chris, that looks like a visual representation of France. If I had to wager a guess. Synthad, hey Mark, what's going on? Glad to have you on here. If you don't watch Synthad stuff, you should absolutely. He has forgotten more about Modular than I know. So if you are interested in learning anything about Modular, definitely check out his YouTube channel. Let's see, one thing I wanted to ask last time was the interplay between the Ghost and the Meta in this setup. Okay, how I'm using each. So the Ghost is, there's 2 sends per channel in the performance mixer. I have the Ghost on send 1, send 1 or send 2? Yeah, the Ghost is on send 1. So for example, if I'm playing this bass line, I can flip this to send 1 and I can turn up my Ghost track. And then I can start to add from the aux send, I can start to send that bass line to the Ghost. And so that's giving me that kind of background wash, kind of atmospheric stuff, just going straight from there. So that's on send number 1. Send number 2, I have going to the Kozlin, which is a frequency shifter. And then from the Kozlin, it is actually sending to the Ghost. So I can send things through the Kozlin to the Ghost. I can send them directly to the Ghost. In order to kind of mess around with or mess up or whatever the sounds that I'm sending into it. So like, for example, that same bass line, if I was to send that to the Kozlin, and then start to shift the frequency, so that allows me to blend the original sound of the bass with the Kozlin, frequency shift it through a filter, and then that's actually on a send going into the Ghost as well. So the only sound source of everything that you're hearing right now is just the Ericsson's bass line, right? But it's going its own dry signal. It also has a signal going through the frequency shifter, which is being frequency shifted and filtered, and it's also being sent through the Ghost on a return. So there's kind of 3 different returns, but it's all coming from one single source. So if I was to take these out, that's the original sound source. Then you have the Kozlin. Make sure that I'm going through the Kozlin. modular, there's always something. All right, well, something odd with my Koslin, but we'll see what's going on another time. Maybe I've got a... Let's see here. Well, we'll see. Obviously something weird with the Koslin. But the idea being that, going back to Mark's question, the way I'm using the Ghost and the Meta, the Ghost is one of those sends. Even though I can go through the Koslin to the Ghost, or I can go directly into the Ghost. So it is on a send with its own return. So this is just like, that's just like the effect part without the dry signal coming in pre-filter from the bass. So so that's the first way, the first one that I'm using the Ghost. Then the other one that I'm using is the Oxy Meta. I have that on the master send and return from the whole thing, so that it's really acting as kind of my final end of chain performance effects. If you've seen my setup from kind of previous iterations, I used to have the Octatrack with EasyBot's performance template in it, and it was a bit overkill for what I was doing. I didn't need all of the like super deep functionality that performance template had. I just needed a few simple effects, and I wanted to scale down and take one less box with me when I traveled. So I switched it up for the Meta. So the Meta is on the master send and return. The Digitakt is even coming into a mix into the mixer here. So really everything is going through the Meta. So that way I can do things like, if I'm... Let's get something going over here too. So stuff coming from the modular case, from the Digitakt, and then if I go, for example, into the filter here, I'm able to filter everything all together. Right? So it all acts as one kind of coherent sound that's all going through those performance effects. And I'm really truly using them as kind of transitional and performance effects on the master. So they're really master effects. You could put a Meta on individual channels and use it as kind of a multi-effects unit on individual channels. You could chain two of them on your master effect, and then you would have you could have one of them being, like the riser effect, and the other one being like the snare roll or whatever you wanted to. So you can mix them up that way if you wanted to, but just like this, I'm using it in kind of its most simple state, which is end of chain, everything goes through it. I shouldn't say end of chain. Everything goes through it before it goes into either out to the house, or in this case, it's going into the analog heat plus effects, just for that kind of last little bit of magic. But it's really the end of all of the summing of everything from the mixers is all going through the Meta. So that way those performance effects affect everything, whether it's in the Digitakt or whether it's in the modular. So hopefully that answers your question, Mark. Let's see here. Oh, you got a Ghost. Awesome. The Ghost is really interesting, and I was talking with somebody about it the other day, and they actually one of the students who's taking my course, and they weren't sure that they were loving it, and I was kind of mentioning that it really depends on how you're going to use it. So I like it with certain settings of all of the effects at once to give me that kind of big washed out sound. So if I was to go back to here. Oh, you know what? I know why my Koslin wasn't working, because I had the wrong send on it. So here's what that sounds like. This is the frequency shifter. So it splits the mono signal into left and right, and then it frequency shifts those frequencies slightly off from one another. So it gives you a really cool bit of sound. Then I have that going into the Ghost. So the Ghost provides that big overall wash you hear, and I like to be able to control or to manipulate that wash using the filter. So it's got a DJ style high pass, low pass filter in the Ghost. And if you boost up the resonance a little bit, so you get that little resonant boost right before the cutoff, and then you start messing with that cutoff, what that'll do is it almost acts as like a mini bandpass, and it starts to pick out individual frequencies from whatever's being sent into it, and it sounds like there's another synth that comes in, and you can bring in like different melodies that way. So again, I'll go back to it here. So if I bring in the Ghost, and then I boost up that resonance just a little, and I start to move the filter, all of those are harmonics in that bass sound as it goes through the Coslin. Then as you move the Coslin, so all I'm doing now is just moving that filter on the Ghost. So you do something like that and it sounds like a whole nother synth came in, right? And because I have it on its own return, I can adjust the level of that as well. You know, and then you just bring in a kick with it. So again, all of this is just coming from here. There's nothing coming from the Digitakt 2 right now. Everything is coming from the Modular, and everything is basically either kick, hat, or Ericsson's bass line, and the bass line's going through the Coslin, through a filter, and into the Ghost. So if I pull out my kick and hat, all of that is coming from the bass line, through the frequency shifter, through the Ghost. And each of those is controllable. So if I was to pull out the dry signal of the bass line, I still have the signal going through the Coslin because I have this set to pre-fader. So the fader amount doesn't affect that, only the send. So if I turn the send down, it's gone. But if I bring the send back up, that's sending that bass pattern out through those without the bass being up. Right? And then the same thing goes for the Ghost and the Coslin. If I pull the Coslin out, it's on pre-fader as well, going to the Ghost on that send. So this is just the effect, which is pre-fader of the bass going through the Koslin on pre-fader and then into this ghost wash. Now I can mess with this. And this has a sidechain input as well, which is sidechaining from my kick, but not from the audio here of the kick. It's from an original signal. So I don't have to have the kick up for it to sidechain either. So I can have a ton of sidechain just on that effect. Then add back in the Koslin. Add a kick with it. And then I can add back in the original. And that's my dry signal going through there. So anyway, tons of flexibility, and that's kind of why I have it set up this way. I wanted to get the broadest variety of sound palette in a small case with a limited number of voices. And so that's why trying to use the sends as best I can on here. I wish this mixer could send both A and B together, but I've kind of gotten around that by using the pre-fader on certain things, so I can send the original through the Koslin and then have the Koslin do that. So it's that way it combines the A and B send, being the Koslin and the Ghost, so I can still get that dual, the dual affected chain coming back in through here. So it gives me some control over those things. But I do love the amount of control that's here. Another cool thing that this can do, the way this is set up, is, so you notice the pre-fader bit of that. So that's the bass line on pre-fader going through there. But I could also do another synth on pre-fader. So I can send both of those into the Koslin. Then when the frequency shifter shifts, it's shifting both because that signal's mixed onto one send that's going into the Koslin. So then what I'm doing is I'm frequency shifting both of those modules at the same time. And I have filter control over that as well. And I'm going through the Ruccialeggio, so this also has wavefolding. Cool thing about the Ruccialeggio as well is you can put the wavefolder pre-filter, post-filter, or both. So like right now it's on pre-filter so because I like getting all that grittiness and then being able to control it with the filter. But I have to turn this down because it goes a little crazy. If I put it on both, this is getting it before the filter, then it's filtered out, and then it wavefolds again. And again, that's just those two signals pre-fader going into the Koslin. So there's not even actually a voice happening here. I could bring in the dry, both of them if I want. And then you throw in a hat and a kick. And then you add in the Ghost for that overall wash. So you can see it gives you a ton of variety to be able to kind of blend signals, mix them together using the sends to send to the Koslin. And then, the Koslin, you can also just bring it down to 0. So you're not affecting it at all. You're not shifting the frequency at all. And then it just becomes this unique voice where you've mixed together a bunch of the sends going through a filter and into the effect. So it gives you a ton of cool stuff that you can do there as well. So yeah, it just added in a bunch of flexibility into my rig. So that's kind of why I have everything set up this way. Cool. Let's see where else. Got to drop for dinner. All right. See you later, Paul. Hopefully we'll see you back soon. Melodies and rhythms. Yes, melodies and rhythms. Hey, Ed, what's going on? Synth dad from Ireland with a lovely whiskey in hand, as a true Irish gentleman would be. That's perfect. Wish I had whiskey. I have a tea. I have a tea in my hand. So I'll enjoy my tea while you enjoy your whiskey. Although, I don't know, it's 4:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday. I could probably have a whiskey too. Although for me it would be a bourbon, not an Irish whiskey, sorry. But yeah. So let's see what else we got going here. Using the ghost as parallel send, exactly. And sends in different ways. So like the Oxy Meta is being used as kind of the master send return, where the ghost is being used as an assignable send return that I can kind of mix things into. Or so again, it's on its own send, or it's also on the pre-fader send from the Koslin. So if I send to the Koslin, I'm also sending to the ghost if I choose to bring up that fader. But I can just flip through the other send and not send to the Koslin at all and just send to the ghost. So it gives me some flexibility there to be able to mix and match. Let's see what else here. If you've got any other questions, feel free to pop those in the chat. Happy to answer questions on any of this stuff, any of this gear, or stuff that's not this gear. You want to talk about my course, you want to talk about traveling, gigs coming up, gigs I played, Super Booth, I don't know, random stuff, the analog heat, the Oxy One. We could talk about all sorts of things. So feel free to check it out. Have you tried the latest Ghost firmware? I actually have not. I've never changed the firmware on that since I got it. So they changed the distortion to a less aggressive distortion. That's cool. I would actually probably use it more, because right now I never put the distortion up past like 20% because it gets really aggressive really fast. So yeah, that might be cool. I'll definitely check that out. Have to see. I'm not even sure how to update the firmware on that. Is there a USB on the back of the module that I use to update the firmware? If you've done it, let me know in the chat how the firmware update goes, because I'm not sure. I'm not a big fan of the ones where you have to plug it in and do it using a tone and stuff like that. It gets confusing. So if there's a USB, that's amazing. Might also, no, that one doesn't have an SD card, so never mind. So it would be USB if it was anything. Yeah, but so, yeah, that's how I'm using those things. Again, the Battering Ram and the Archer's rig are very new to the setup. And it's kind of the first time I've had drums in my modular kit. I guess I shouldn't say that. Way back in the beginning when I first started with modular, I was using the Endorphin's Queen of Pentacles as kind of a drum unit. But then I quickly decided that I wanted that space for other voices. So I sold it and went back to using kind of outboard drum machines. So yeah, so I wasn't using drums in my case at all. And, just because of the quality of these, and not only the quality of sound, but the playability, that for me is key. Being able to just reach up and grab something. These modules, even though they're tiny, have extra large and easy to control knobs, compared with something like, you get in here and you're like dialing in a knob just like with your fingers like this, where these ones are like the same size as you would have. They're actually bigger than the knobs on the Digitakt. So it's really handy. There's enough space between them so you're not bumping into other stuff when you're using them. And yeah, I really love the way they lay these out. I love the larger size knobs and the amount of space that they have. And they have kind of endless sweet spots, which for me was the big key with those things. So let's see. I believe you do have to use USB. Oh, use audio to update. Not a big fan of that. I can try. It's not my favorite, but I'll give it a try. So we'll see. We'll see how that works. I may end up using the same firmware that I've been using for a while now. So yeah, the battering ram and the archer's rig are very playable, very usable, and that's why they're here. That's why they're in my case. I have to kind of figure out what I'm going to shuffle around. I think I'm going to get the choral back in here just to have a couple more voices. I probably take the Zadar out because I don't have that patched into anything right now, so I'm not using it. But I could take that out and what else? Yeah, if I take that out and the effects aid, move this over, move the meta down here, and then put the Oxy choral there to kind of get that one back in there for some more voices. Otherwise, if there's another archer's rig, I may, as much as I hate to say this, I may have to go back to my next size larger case and go to the 6U104 instead of the 6U84, but that kind of throws off my travel rig, so I don't really want to go down that road. So I may end up staying where I'm at. But yeah, because I do have a couple of traveling shows coming up, non-confirmed for the end of this month, so I won't say anything about that one, but it looks like next month, what's next month? Oh, NobCon in Chicago. Don't know if I'll be playing there, but I'll be bringing my rig. Don't have anything lined up yet, but who knows? Chicago's always fun, so maybe, but I'll be at NobCon and I'll have my rig there. So I do need to have this ready to travel for that. And then in October is the Amsterdam dance event, ADE. It's also the, what's it called? The Machina Britannica, I think, no, Bristronica, because it's in Bristol. Anyway, the Bristol Synth Show, I may go early so I can go to that one because I've never been to that. It seems like a really fun show. And there's a random rumor that there might be a London show in there. And then there's definitely an ADE show. Just found out yesterday. I'll get you some more information on that as soon as I have it. But it looks like that's going to be on Sunday the 20th during the day. There will be a show during ADE in Amsterdam. So definitely check the social media and all that stuff about that one once that happens. So let's see. Cool, see you in Chicago and Bristol. Yeah, for sure. Oh, so you're coming back to Super Boot. That's right. I totally forgot that. I'm excited to see you. Synth Dad, Mark is one of the coolest people in the world. He's so much fun to hang out with. We have a blast every year at Super Booth and with our kind of nerdy little clique of people that all stay together and take the train out to Super Booth together, and tons of fun, and look forward to doing that. And then of course, Super Booth, NobCon. If you've never been to NobCon, it's so much fun because it's in Chicago. It's in Schaumburg, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and it's in a hotel. And everybody who's at the conference, at the kind of gear fest, whatever you want to call it, all stays in the hotel. So we're all in the same space. So like, for example, at Super Booth, there's too many people and it's not at a hotel and it's outside the city. So once the event's over at night, everybody kind of scatters into Berlin and goes to do different stuff, which is definitely tons of fun in its own right. But you tend to break up into little groups and go do your thing. At NobCon, everybody stays in the same hotel, so you just kind of hang out by the bar and have beers, and people bring your modular gear and set it up in the lobby next to the lobby bar in the hotel and kind of mess around with stuff. And it's cool because you get to, it's much more socializing after the hours of the show than there is at Super Booth. Super Booth, there's more to do because you can go to all the cool clubs in Berlin, and you can go, there's like lots of events and shows and restaurants and bars and all that stuff. At NobCon, everybody stays in the same building, but what's fun about that is it kind of pushes everyone together. So you end up, having breakfast with people and having lunch and dinner and getting drinks and staying up late and playing on your gear and doing that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. If you have a chance to go to NobCon, I would highly recommend it. Let's see, I do need to plug this in because I'm about to lose power. That would be not good. There we go. Awesome. Hopefully that didn't mess up the signal at all. I hate getting that kind of USB hum. Yeah, and then Bristol, tell me what that's like. If you've been to the Bristol Machina Bristronica show, everything I saw about it looked really super cool. So I'm excited. I've never been to Bristol. I've actually never been to Northern England at all. So, which I think it's in Northern England, isn't it? Anyway, very excited to potentially do that and hopefully play a gig in London if that ends up working out. So, yeah. So once again, if you have any questions, pop those into the chat, and happy to chat about whatever. If not, I'll just do another quick plug here for my course. It's called the Hardware Performance System, and we just completed the first session of it. The second session went live 2 days ago. So all the people who signed up for that are already able to go and get the downloadable and watchable online videos. There's 52, I think, videos that are grouped into 8 sections, which is everything from sound design and gear selection and setting things up and traveling and all that kind of stuff. So each section, processing and all that. And then each section has a live Q&A that we do. There's 2 per week for a month. So every Sunday and every Wednesday, we do a 1 hour long live Zoom call where there's a Q&A about that section. So the first one is this Sunday, it's tomorrow, and that's gonna be about section 1, which is about 4 videos. So you'd go in and watch those videos, and any questions that you have about that you weren't able to kind of figure out on your own by seeing the videos, or something wasn't clear, or you wanna go a bit more in depth or see some more examples, we do the 1 hour Q&A video on that section. And so there's 8 sections in the course. There's 2 calls per week for 4 weeks. So there's 8 of those calls. Then you also get a 1 hour one-on-one Zoom with me where we can go over whatever. We can go over your rig. You can, show me your gear. We can troubleshoot, patching or anything that you've got going there. And then you also get to send once a week, you send a 10-minute or up to a 10-minute video of you performing live with your gear. And I send you back a critique. So critiques on, mixing, sound design, sound selection, performance, smoothness, overall impression, all that kind of stuff. So I'll give you some feedback, and you get to do that once a week for 4 weeks. So over that time, you get to see how you've developed and kind of get specific things to work on throughout the course. And then there's a great online community of anybody who signed up for the course gets access to the online community, and you get access to that and the videos ongoing after the course, the 1 month is finished. So you can always go back and watch the courses whenever you want. And you can go into that community anytime you want. And it's all people who have taken the course. So you all have this kind of same level of knowledge. And it's not like, a toxic Discord where everybody goes in there to just shit on each other about like, hey, why do you have this gear? You don't know what you're doing and whatever. This is people who've actually invested in getting better at what they're doing. They're learning how to perform on hardware boxes, on modular, or combinations of those, or one or the other. And they're in it for different reasons. Some have the aspiration to perform live in front of a crowd. Other people just want to get much better at jamming on their gear so they can have fun at home alone and just enjoy what they're doing rather than struggling through, how do I do this? How do I sound design? Why doesn't this sound the way I want it to? And that kind of endless cycle of YouTube videos and reading manuals and all that stuff. This can kind of help point you in the right direction on a system that'll be more fun to play. So whatever reason that you would be into learning how to play live with an emphasis on improvisation, the course is definitely for you. And you just go online. There's a link down below. Go online and sign up for it. And then as soon as you sign up, you get access to all the videos. You can start watching those right away. And then you'll get links to the one-on-ones and to the calendar to sign up for your one-on-one session and all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. And you don't have to pay for it all at once. There's a pay over time thing with this stuff called Afterpay. So you could just say you want to pay for it, and then it lets you take the course, and then you can kind of pay for it over time, which is also pretty cool. So if you don't have the money right away, you can jump right in anyway. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to do another version of this. I probably won't be doing them every month. I did one last month and one this month, but I do need to take a break for a little bit because I'm working on a second course on something totally different. And so I need some time for that. But so if you're interested in this, jump on board now because I'm not sure exactly when the next one's going to be. So I'd love to have you in there. And it's cool too because it's people from all over the world. The first course we had Germany, France, Belgium, US, Canada, and where else? There was somewhere else and I can't remember off the top of my head. And in this new session, there's a bunch of different places in the US, there's Canada, there's Austria, there is Singapore, there is, I can't remember. So like people from all over, it's cool. You don't have to be just like local. You don't have to show up for a thing. Oh, and one thing to remember too, those coaching sessions, the question and answer, if you can't make it, they're all recorded. And so you can go back in. I post the link in the group chat, and you can go back in and watch those anytime. So if you can't make the group sessions, it's not like you're not going to get anything out of it. And they are probably the best part of the course because everybody gets to kind of benefit from everyone else's questions. So you may not think to ask something, but somebody else might, and then you'll learn from whatever they were thinking of. So it's a really interesting, really cool way to learn. And I think the people who've been in it, there's a few of the people from the course here in the chat, so I'm sure you can ask them. They'll let you know what they thought about it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So if you'd like to sign up, please do. So let's see, anyone else? Any other questions? Hey, what's going on? New people joining the chat. That's a good thing. We like that. Yeah. So any other questions? If you have those, chuck those in the live chat, and I'll be happy to get to those in a little bit. Otherwise, I am going to just mess around a little bit with what we were just messing with. Turn this kick down just a little bit. Something a little bit more mellow. Mess around with this bass line a little bit. Cool. Little jam. Let's see. You got a few more people popping into the chat here. Let's see what we got going on. All right. What do you think of the Akai MPC platform for Live's use? So I have mixed feelings about the Akai. I like the MPC Live, for example. I like the form factor of it. I like the pads. I think they're great. So if you're a finger drummer, the pads are awesome. I would say they're definitely the best there is. As far as the workflow goes, not at all for me, but it's, again, you know, as I say all the time on this channel, there's not one good and one bad workflow. Like, certain people hate the gear that I love, certain people love the gear that I hate. It's not about that. It's about what's the best thing for you. So I think that the MPC platform in general is, it's super deep, meaning it does a lot. You know, as far as like a DAW in a box, it is a DAW in a box. That's really what it is. So you have a lot of functionality. You've got, you know, kind of unlimited effects and unlimited synths and unlimited samples and unlimited, you know, being able to chop samples and mix them up and do that stuff. So you have a ton of options. The problem is, and this isn't just an Akai problem, anytime the more stuff you try to cram into one box to have it do all the things, the less simple and easy it is to do any of those things. And so the thing for me, the workflow thing for me that doesn't work with the MPC products is that like, this setup is set up to be very hands-on, you know, like very immediate. I can turn a knob and a thing happens, and I can turn a couple knobs at the same time and quickly move from one to the other. Anytime you want to do things like that in the MPCs, in you know, like the Roland machines, particularly like the MC707 or things like that, you have to go into menus. You have to kind of dive in deep in order to get to the parameter that you want to get to, that you want to change, and then change that parameter, and then go to a different menu to change another parameter. And so for an improvised style like I play, it's really not a workflow that works for me, because it's really difficult to do, you know, a bunch of different things at the same time, because there's so many menus that you have to dive through. And then you add on top of that having a touch screen, where, you know, with a touch screen, you can't build up muscle memory on a touch screen. You can with knobs. So like, I can reach down and know that I'm grabbing the frequency on the Cosline because I know where it is. I can't do that on a touch screen because there's no kind of point of reference. So it's not exactly in the same spot, and there's no kind of feedback knowing that I'm touching the thing that I'm trying to touch. So that's why, for me, again, to improvise, play things improvised live, and change a lot of things quickly, you know, in a dark thing where there's lights flashing and you're hot and you're, you know, things are going wrong and whatever. It's really great to be able to just reach for something and know what it is and get that feedback that you're on the knob without having to actually look at it. And I don't get that personally from a touchscreen. So that makes the MPC workflow not the best for me for live performance. Now, that said, there's people that love it. And if you are either a finger drummer, you're gonna love the MPC. It's got the best pads there are. They're super responsive, they're great. And if you're a sample chopper, you know, meaning that you like to take long samples, chop them up, and make them into things, the MPC workflow is great for that. That's kind of what they've been known for. It's what they've done since the beginning. The sequencers aren't my favorite. And the controls over the sound design. And for the style of music that I do, it's very sequencer heavy and very sound design heavy. So because of that, using things that don't have the best sequencers and are a little bit clunky and difficult to do the sound design on is not something that works really well for me. It doesn't work for my personal live workflow. I did have an MPC Live 2 and I liked it. It was fine. But at the same time, once I kind of got into it and figured out, you know, how it worked and what it did, I just realized very quickly that it wasn't for me. There's certain workflows that I get along with much better, like Modular I really enjoy. The Elektron workflow I really enjoy. The Oxy one's workflow I really enjoy. The Percons, which is right over there, really enjoy the workflow for that. The analog rhythm from Elektron as well, really love that. The Octatrack, interestingly enough, the Electrons get a bad rep about being really convoluted and confusing, and I think a lot of that is because of the Octatrack. The Octatrack is very convoluted and confusing. These newer boxes are not at all. They're crazy immediate and really intuitive to use, but the Octatrack is really convoluted and difficult to use. And the thing about it is it goes back to the MPC thing. They tried to make a machine that would do so many things with just a limited number of knobs that you have to have deep menus in order to make that work. You have to go to a different menu in order to make that knob have a different function now, in order to kind of be able to adjust all the things that there are to adjust, all the things that it can do. So because of that, the Octatrack can be really convoluted and confusing to set up. Once you set it up the way you want it, and I'm sure the MPCs are very much the same way, once you set them up the way you want, you can then use them in a simple way. But you don't get all of the value of the depth of the machine if you're just setting it up and then forgetting it and using it all the same way all the time. So that's kind of where I am with the MPCs. I think they're again really cool for sample chopping and for sample editing, and I think that they're really good for finger drumming. So if that's what you're doing, if those pads are important to you, I think they're kind of second to none. They're kind of the best there is. So you'll probably love those. But if not, if you're not a finger drummer and you're not a super duper sample chopper, then it may not be the workflow for you. So let's see what else we got going here. Force workflow is better if you're playing techno, more buttons for macros, extra knobs. Yeah, I would say the Force is, I had one of those for a while too. I borrowed one to do to do a test on it and to do a video on. Didn't end up keeping it either. The thing with the Force for me, it's kind of like the Push 3, that it can do a lot of things, but it's gigantic for one thing. Like, it's a big, giant, heavy brick. So if you're traveling a lot, you may not get exactly what you want. Now, again, I will say it is really good. The Akai Force is really good if the way that you're going to be playing live is by pre-preparing things in Ableton or in the Akai Force. You can do it on the machine as well. But if you're going to be pre-preparing whole tracks and breaking them down into stems that you can launch as clips, if you're going to be doing that, then the Akai Forces will be really super handy for you. If not, again, it's that same idea of a very deep piece of kit that still has very limited knobs and buttons for those functions. And that's one of the reasons why I've kind of gone the modular route, is because I like to have everything really on the surface. There's very few things. I think there's only 2 modules with screens, and even those I don't ever really, once I have it set up, I don't really go into the screen during performance. I'll set it to do a certain thing and then I'll use it that way. And then with the Elektron boxes, it's the beauty of the workflow with the modern Elektron boxes. Now forget about the Octatrack for a minute, because that's old school software. It's not the same firmware anymore. It's not even the same chips. It's like nothing is the same. This is what everything's based off of now. And with these, it's really handy because you've got, each one of the buttons is a page. So you can say, I want to go to the effects page. Here I am on the effects page. There's 8 possible parameters. And right next to them, there are 8 buttons or 8 knobs, encoders, that line up with those 8 things. Then there's 2 on this side. I can control that right over here from this one. So they line up. It makes a lot of sense. With the MPC, for example, with that workflow for playing live, if you notice you've got the screen, and then on the right side of the screen, there's I think there's 4 knobs. can't remember, it's been a while. There's 4 knobs, and those control parameters that are on the screen, but sometimes the parameter they control are right next to the knobs and they line up like this, where it's like this is this, this is this, this is this, and it makes a lot of sense. But sometimes you've got the knobs this way and the parameters are down here, or they're at different places on the screen. So again, you can't build up that muscle memory because you don't know where the thing is that you're trying to do. And that was one of the things that was really frustrating for me. Whereas with this workflow, like if I go to the filter page, I've got 8 parameters and 8 knobs again. If I go to the source page, I've got 8 parameters and 8 knobs again, and it makes a lot of sense. And there's sometimes there's a second layer to the menu, and all you have to do is just hit it a second time, and then you're there. And that toggles you back and forth between those. So it's not like, for example, the Roland workflow, like on an MC707, you go into that and you have to like dive 6 menus deep in order to change one thing, and then you back out, and then you got to go into another tunnel of parameters to change one thing, and it gets really convoluted because it's such a deep machine, but with that tiny little screen and only a couple knobs that you can use. So unless you're setting it up and you're pre-assigning everything before you perform, you know your live set from start to finish from scratch, those workflows I think will work less well for you. If you are, if you're going to be doing improvisation like the way I play, it's you want something that can be really immediate, because you need to make quick decisions and quick modifications to your setup while you're performing. And so that MPC, that Roland workflow don't tend, at least for me personally, work as well unless they're pre-set up, and that kind of doesn't go along with the way I perform. So that's why they don't work great for me, but they're really good for other people. So anyway, let's see. Has a few CV outs if you're into modular. Yes, that's true. I don't know if any of the other MPCs do. Does the MPC Live have CV out? I don't remember. But yeah, the force for me has kind of gone away. I think about it way less since the Push 3 came out. I know there's a huge price difference and whatever, but as far as being able to, the force for me was always kind of like Ableton Lite in a piece of hardware, and the Push 3 is, a better version of Ableton in a similarly large and heavy piece of hardware. So I think they act very much the same, other than the touchscreen. But as I said before, touchscreen's not my thing, really, just because you can't build up any muscle memory with it. Hey, Honeysmack, what's going on? All the way from Australia. That's why the good morning. So it is morning for you. What time is it over there? It's 5 in the night, so it's 5 a.m., 6, 7 in the morning, I think. 7, 8, 9 in the morning? I can't remember. Something like that. It's morning. But yes, good evening here. How's the Ghost, and where is it in the signal chain? So it's on a send. I was just mentioning this a little while ago, but it's on, so I've got 2 sends in my mixer. One send is going to the Ghost, and then it's returning to its own channel right here. And then the other send is going to the Coslin to frequency shift, so I can kind of twist and contort sounds that I send to it. And then the Coslin's actually going into the Ghost as well, so I can add not only twisted contortion, but I can also add effect to it. But yeah, I use it as kind of a wash. So again, if I bring it up here, why am I not getting any sound out of that one? Super. So yeah, so anyway, I can get a ton of of different kind of sounds out of it that way by putting those on a send. So yeah, I use it really as like a big washed out sound. So. Oh, that's why. Because I'm filtered. So this is just the effect of the ghost with things being fed into it. And so it's using delay, turn on my delay sound a little bit, delay, reverb, and then filter. There's a little bit of sidechain that comes from the kick here. And then a tiny little bit of distortion, but not much. And then I use the filter to sweep. So anyway, that's just the ghost without the signal, the drive signals that are going into it. So like we can take the bass. So you've got like this bass sound that's going into the Koslin. And I'm gonna take the BIA out. So that's the bass going into the Koslin, so it can be split and frequency shifted. And there's and then I can bring up the ghost, and then that's it's coming from the Koslin into the ghost. So all of that is just coming from that individual bass. So if I bring that out, because it's on pre-fader, you'll still hear it. So that's just the frequency shifted signal and the ghost from that bass without any of the original signal going through. So anyway, that's how I'm using that, how I'm using the ghost. That answered the, the question there. Let's see here. Oh, 9:14 in the morning. That's what I thought. See, I wasn't that far off. I was kind of remember the time change between here and there. Yes, the meta was turned down. You were right. That's why I got it. Let's see. How much of your set is happy accidents versus dialing in a specific sound? I'm still learning, feel like I lean towards happy accidents from the majority of what I'm doing. So, good question. That's basically most of what my course is about, is kind of, there is a system to it, but it's a system of using randomness and generative things and improvisational skills and things like that to be able to do stuff on the fly. So I think there's a third thing. It's not just either happy accident or pre-planned. What I'm doing is I'm setting things up in a way so that I can generate things, like generate the happy accidents, but I'm doing them within parameters that I've set. So for example, I use the Oxy One sequencer because I can set something to a key and then I can generate random things. So for example, the bass line that I was playing before. So if I was to just like take the bass down to here and have it just be like an 8-step kind of like on my root note bass line, I can still kind of sound design on the fly. Right? But then I can also go in here and this acts kind of like a piano roll when it's in this mode. So I can go in and I can change things up and I can do things pseudo randomly where I can go in and just be like, okay, I want to do. Right, so I can just pop in some notes with an idea that I get in my head, like I want this to go a little higher, I want this to be in the middle, or I want it to go, you know, I want it to go from low to high. I can just do like, right, so I can just put things in randomly, so it's not really like happy accident. I do still have some control over it in that I've set it to a certain key, so I know that those notes will all be in key, and I'm kind of drawing them in where I would like them to be, but so it's not totally an accident. Now it is possible with this to go into the random generation bit and go in and just hit a, like if I change the range to, I don't know, plus or minus 4, I can just hit this and it will randomly generate pitch for me. Or I can hit it again. So I can generate something that is happy accident, but it's not totally random. What I'm doing is, you know, the way I look at it, and I've said this a bunch on these videos before, so forgive me if you've heard this before, but the way I look at it is performing live is I'm having a conversation with the machines. So I want to have my say, but I also want the machines to have their say. Like I want them to say something to me, to the, you know, I want them to add to the conversation that the audience is listening to in their own way, meaning a random generation or a pattern that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of or whatever, or, you know, what you would call happy accidents. I want those to come from the machines. But then I also want to have my control and my say in what's going on, meaning that like for example, within the modular, I don't have any way to save presets on any of the things that I use in the modular. You can in the Digitakt, but not in the modules that I'm using. So because of that, I'm actually controlling the sound design. And for me, performing live improvised techno, and I think Honey Smack will agree with this because this is, I've heard him play as well. It's live improvised techno for me is two things. It's groove and it's sound design. So if you can come up with a cool groove and you can get people going with something simple like a great kick, a great hat, some toms, get kind of a groove going to get people moving, then you start sound designing over that with, you know, simple patterns or rolling patterns or things, and they're less important what they are and more important how they're done. So I can generate something random like this, you know, and I can put a kick drum to it. Now this was generated randomly. I can generate another one randomly if I want to. And then that's the machines giving me their part of the conversation. That's the machines having their say. So now I'm gonna say like, oh, that's interesting. Now I'm gonna add to that. So I know, for example, that in my, on my hat channel, I've got a hi-hat that I can bring in. And I think my part of this conversation is that with this rolling bass line and this kick drum, I think it could use a hi-hat. So I might just bring in a hat. And I think that that's gonna add to what I'm doing. Or I may think that that hi-hat needs to change. Maybe I want it to be an open hat instead of a closed hat. I want to be able to adjust that on a module. Right? And maybe with that open hat, I want to bring in, you know, some different closed hat patterns. You know, and maybe now I think that needs that kind of wash in the background. So I know where those sounds are. I know what those individual pieces are that I can use. So it's not just like hit random and let the machine do its thing. It's use that kind of controlled randomness in certain ways in order to let the machines have their say in their part of the conversation. And then I go in and I'm having my say. I'm controlling the sound, I'm doing the sound design, I'm bringing in different instruments. What the randomness does is it generates ideas that I can then build on. And you know, if we go back to just the bass line here, like just this part. So let's say I generate this bass line randomly and there's things that I don't like about it. I can still go in and say, okay, I like most of this. I want this to change a little bit though. I want the last notes to be up high. So I'll do, maybe I want this to jump an octave. So I can go in then and adjust that. And let's say, you know, I've done this for a while and I've been through this section of my live performance. Maybe then I'll generate a new random idea. Or maybe instead of using this synth, maybe I'll then go to a different synth and generate, you know, let's just do another randomly generated pattern here on this one. And then I can bring in a different bass synth. You know, if I've got my kick drum. Beautiful thing about this module is that it has an octave switch, so I can just switch down the octave if I want. Again, this is coming from the random generation of this. So again, the whole idea being a combination of randomness that's controlled by setting the kind of guardrails for the way you use randomness, and then reacting to that. It's also a matter of setting up sounds that go well together beforehand, so that when you bring things in or when you need something, you know where it is. And then using a sequencer like the Oxy One that can do random note generation and being able to generate those notes that you then use here. But you've got the guardrails of it being in key and in a certain octave and all of that stuff. So yes, there are some happy accidents, like there is random generation, but when I think of happy accidents, I think about that more in the sound design world. So like, for example, with the Digitakt, you can randomize whole pages. So if you're trying to do some sound design, you could just randomize and you'll accidentally come across new sounds and go, okay, now that's cool. Now I can use that and go on with that. So it's a different way to use randomization within your playing. And for me, that's kind of more the happy accident side. With sequencing, there are happy accidents, but I generally feel like I have more control over them than having them be an accident. Really, truly, they are randomizations, but it's really controlled randomization. So I'm able to set parameters and set guidelines and then randomize within that, so I can keep a certain amount of control. So anyway, that's how I perform live. Is when I go to do a show, I'll set up everything, do my sound check, and then I go in and blank out my sequencers. And then when I come up to perform, I'm starting off with blank sequencers, and I'm either drawing stuff in because I have an idea, or I'm doing some random generation or whatever it takes to kind of get started. And that gets the conversation with the machine started, and then I continue on that conversation for however long the show is. So sometimes an hour, sometimes 4 hours, however long, doesn't really matter. So let's see what else we got here. Sounds great as always. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. If you guys aren't familiar with HoneySmack, check out his YouTube channel. He's a phenomenal live hardware performance artist who's been doing this for decades and actually has a doctorate of it. So he is a doctor of techno, which there are I don't know if there's any others. I think you're the only one, right? Yeah. So do I love the Ghost? What do I dislike about it? I do love it. It is integral to my live performances. It is integral to my sounds. It basically replaces the need to have any kind of atmospheres or any kind of background kind of pads or anything like that, because I don't really like those. They're a little too tonal, they're a little too melodic for me. I'm not into that. So I like this kind of like atmospheric background sounds. And what I was doing previously with that is I would either download or make or record or whatever atmospheric loops, and I would have to have something that could play those loops, and they would just sit there and loop, but I didn't have any control over them. What's cool with this is that this is like live generating atmospheres using whatever's going through it that's being played at the moment. So I know that it's going to fit in, it's going to be the same kind of harmonics, it's going to be in key. So it's going to actually have a logical place in the performance, and I don't have to worry about changing it up all the time. Like I can just set it and forget it. I have my kind of set that I like, then I'll mess around with the filter, and sometimes I'll adjust some of the settings if it doesn't sound quite the way I like it. But for the most part, it's something I can just send things to and create that kind of background atmosphere of things. So let's see here. Get that side chain really going. So this is all just the Ghost. There's no dry signal of anything that's going into it. So with resonance, if I move that filter, it gives me whole new voices, whole new atmospheres, but it's all in key and it makes sense with what's going on here. So like if I was to bring up like the Kozlin, you'll hear what is making this, right? all that you hear is coming from this. This is the source material for the Kozlin shift and the Ghost shift. So all of that background atmosphere, and I can bring it down and have it just be really subtle in the background. That gives you that kind of subtle background atmosphere without having to have a looped recorded atmosphere in the setup. So that's what I love the Ghost for. That's why I can't see me ever bringing it out of my kit, because it allows me to have that entire kind of segment of my sound handled without me having to pre-prepare anything. And it improvises along with me, because as I'm improvising on the other gear with sequencers and with changing up my sound design, all that's what's feeding the Ghost, and that's what's creating the sounds. So that all becomes part of it. So yeah, so I love the Ghost. What do I not like about it? It is noisy as hell. If you're into a clean sound, it is not the module for you. I can tell you, I love a grimy sound, and if my sound is too clean, I need to drive it through wave folders and distortion and things like that to get the sound that I like. But let me see. We can here. No, we're not getting it right now. Oh yeah. Let's see, where is it? Okay, that sound you're hearing is the Ghost with absolutely nothing going into it. That's just like the background craziness that happens from everything that's going on inside this. Because it has reverb, delay, distortion, overdrive, compressor, filter, and a gain, all in one module. So all of those things interacting with each other make this ridiculous sound that you hear right now. So that's just the Ghost. Listen, if I take that out, it's gone. So that's just the background sound floor of that module. So if there's something I don't like about it, and I shouldn't say I don't like it, because I do. I don't mind that sound, and I think it adds that kind of distorted, gritty, lo-fi, whatever you want to call it, whatever the trendy term is for these days. It adds that grit to my sound, which I really enjoy. So because of that, I have no desire to clean it up. I know a lot of people who don't like the Ghost and who don't use the Ghost for exactly that reason, because it's too noisy for them. And they're looking for like a really crisp, clean sound through their effects. And the Ghost is not that. It adds a lot of character, if you want to call it that. Like anytime somebody says something adds character, it means it messes up the sound in some way. And I don't necessarily mean that negatively. It messes up the sound in a positive way, but it's not letting a clean sound pass through and just doing its little bit of affecting on that sound. It's actually changing the sound itself. By adding in harmonics and static and distortion and extra noise floor. So that for me is the one drawback of the Ghost, but it's not a drawback for me, so I don't really care. So other than that, I love it, and I use it constantly, nonstop in my shows. So anyway, that's the Ghost. Any other questions? Anyone have anything else they want to pop in here before we call it a day? Let me just refresh, because once I made the mistake of not refreshing, and I found out there was a bunch of questions people asked and they never popped up. So let's see here. Okay, yeah, so I'm glad that answered your question about the happy accidents and stuff. But again, if you are still learning and you're curious of doing that and getting some more of this control, check out my course. The new session just went live a couple days ago. Today's the last day you can sign up for it. Then it closes up for the length of the course, which is a month long. You have access to videos, live chats, feedback on your live sets, one-on-ones with me, an online community that's private to just the people who've taken the course. So if you're interested in it, definitely check that out. Again, today's the last day to sign up. So if you go to the link that's in the description below for the video, or you can go to circlelive.com/courses and you can sign up through there. And I'd love to have you in there. I'd love to get as many people as are interested into the course. It's a great international group that we've got in there right now. So I'm pretty psyched for it. So let's see. Matthew, the ghost forced me to get a power conditioner for my home studio because it was near unusable without it. Yeah, it's, again, like I said, it's, if you need a clean sound, that's not it. And particularly, like, I wondered, did that solve it, getting a conditioner? Because I've used those before and it didn't help. For me, it's the interaction of everything going on inside the unit that's making that sound floor. So that, I don't know that there's necessarily a way to fix that. But maybe getting a sound conditioner would. I have not used that, but at the same time, that's not anything I'm worried about because I like the crazy loudness of the Ghost. But yeah, it's not a clean sound. So if you're looking for a clean effect, get an Eventide or a whatever, Erica Synths. They make some great pedals. Strymon. Get those effects. They're much cleaner. This one is not clean, but that's why I love it. The biggest drawback of it is exactly why I love it. So I wouldn't change it for any of those things, because then I would have to have a reverb and a delay and a distortion and an overdrive and I would have to have all those things to get to the point where I am with this. I like the fact that I've just got it all together, and that includes that gritty, grimy, imperfect noise floor that it has. I was only able to use the first mode, but the second and third were super noisy. Yeah, they are. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I won't dispute that at all. They are crazy loud. I played a gig once where it was this huge sound system in a warehouse kind of after hours place. And I did my sound check. And then when I got done, I just kind of stopped everything. And I turned and I was talking to a friend of mine, and the sound engineer was walking around and he was like looking around like, what is that sound? Like he thought there was something wrong with his rig, like something was shorted or something, whatever. And then I was like, oh no, that's me. And I turned down the Ghost and it totally went away. So yeah, it's definitely there and it's definitely noticeable. But again, it's just I don't know. It all depends on what you're looking for. I'm a huge fan of distortion, but it was too much. Yeah, it's not really distortion. That's the thing. Like, and that's why it can get annoying if it's not something you're interested in. It's really it introduces noise into what you're doing as a sound floor. Now, that said, when I produce a track in the box, often I will put these atmospheres, these kind of sound floor atmospheres in there, whether it's like vinyl crackle or like, a filtered sound of a recording I made, like, out on the street or like in the forest, or I've heard some cool ones that are like recordings inside a train station where you hear just kind of like the hum of people talking, and then you filter those out. Or if you comb filter those, you can get some really cool atmospheres. And then you add in something like vinyl crackle or like the crackle from a fire. If you record that, those are the kind of sound floors that I always would add into my recordings anyway. So for me, the Ghost naturally adds that. So it just saves me having to add in something and having other modules that can do it. But yeah, if that kind of extra noise, staticky, crackly noise is not something that you're into for your sound, you'll need to you'll need to make some concessions with the Ghost. But and again, you don't get all that sound if you're not using multiple effects together either. If you're just using just the reverb, it sounds great, or just the delay, it sounds great. But one of the beauties of the Ghost is you can blend those together to make whole new soundscapes, and that's where you get a lot of that introduced noise. And so, yeah, so that's where I started doing it. Another thing that did help, he said, I've loved it since I first got it. Yeah, much more usable. Now, I would say one thing, I don't know if you messed with this at all, but what is it? I can't remember the name of it. The tone that's in the upper left, if you hold down the lit up button and turn the tone, that's a gain. So you can turn the gain way down, and that way you still have full kind of volume control before you get to the drive. And so if you turn that gain down and then just drive the volume and then you gain up wherever you're sending the signal to, then you can get rid of a ton of that noise that goes into there. So I would mess with that first. That it took me a while. I didn't realize that gain was there until kind of later on in using it. And by then I kind of enjoyed the sound, so I didn't mess with it. But if you hold down the selector, the color, the one that lights up, and turn that down, that turns down the gain of the whole signal rather than gaining it up. So yeah, I would check with that first and see if that helps too. You may not need the whole noise conditioner if you do that. If you turn your gain down and then your volume up, that may get you to where you want to be. So anyway, what else? The noise was high pitched and ear piercing. Yes, it can be. Kind of depends on where the filter's set, but yeah, and how high the resonance is too. That's another thing that really impacts that a lot. So anyway, any final questions before we call it a day here? Anything else in there? If not, I appreciate you all. Thank you all for joining me here. Sign up for the course if you're into it. Again, last day to do that. So click on the link below and do that. Otherwise, hope to see you on here on another stream soon, sometime maybe during the week or maybe not till next weekend. We'll see. But if you're in the course, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow on the very first call. And other than that, thank you guys again for joining. I appreciate it as always, and look forward to seeing you in the next stream. See you later. Bye-bye.